Ready? Did you receive a letter of resignation from him?
Yes.
Did you give it to Letty once you received it?
I don't recall. I may not have received a letter.
So let's go back to the original question. How is it you ended up talking to Letty about the retaliation and complaints?
I had received notice of Rob's resignation, and I'm not sure in what form. And I went to her office to talk about his resignation.
Did she ask you to come to the office to talk about it?
I may have asked her if I could. I don't recall.
You don't remember one way or the other,
No.
but you do recall going to her office and discussing it.
Yes.
Was anyone else present when the two of you spoke together?
No.
You mentioned that Letty was keeping you advised of the conversations she had with Rob about his use of sick leave during the time he was absent, correct?
Yes. She would respond to my concerns.
In other words, right around that time, you began to notice that he was absent a bit.
Yes.
Did you talk to Rob about it?
No.
Why did you go to Letty instead of talking to Rob and seeing if there was a problem and how he was doing?
It was an unusual thing.
How many days in a row did he miss?
He was out for a week.
How many sick days do you get a year there?
12 days a year.
Had Rob used up his 12 days before he took that week off?
No.
You weren't aware that he had gone over his sick leave, correct?
Correct.
Did he discuss with you the reason he was taking sick leave?
No.
What was so unusual about taking a week of sick leave?
I'm not sure that I was aware of why he was out sick.
Would Rob call in to let someone know each day that he wouldn't be in?
Yes, he would call in and let Jake know.
Would Jake then report to you or Letty that Rob was out sick?
Yes.
Can you tell me why it bothered you that he was calling in sick?
It just felt very open-ended to me, and I wasn't sure if I should contact him during his absence.
Was there one period he was out a week, or were these 5 days scattered over a period of time?
It was one solid week.
Now, you were still meeting with Rob on a weekly basis, correct?
We met as often as needed.
You no longer met on a weekly basis as required?
The last 2 months of Rob's employment, our meetings were less frequent.
Isn't it true that you had stopped holding regular weekly meetings with Rob for a period of at least 6 months before he left?
I am sure we met weekly, but not always in a formal thing.
At some point during the week, you might be in the same location with him within the office?
Yes, we often discussed issues relating to his work.
I guess the question in my mind then is that when he's out for a week, why didn't you just walk into his office and ask him how he was doing?
He wasn't in his office. He was out, and I didn't know when he was coming back.
How many days had Rob been out sick when you went to talk to Letty about him?
A week, as I recall.
Then, after you talked to Letty about him, he came back to work?
Yes.
Do you remember how soon after your talk with Letty it was that he returned to work?
It was within a day or two.
Did you tell Letty that you were concerned about Rob?
Yes, I did.
Did you express the nature of your concern to her?
Yes.
What did you say to Letty about your concern for Rob?
That I felt it was something other than his being ill.
How did Letty respond when you told her that?
She said that Rob was having a difficult time and to try to accommodate his time off.
How long after that was it that he resigned?
Less than a month.
Was Letty's only comment to you that Rob was having a difficult time?
Yes.
Did she give you any information as to the nature of the difficulty he was having?
No, she didn't.
Did she tell you how it was that she had arrived at the opinion that Rob was having a difficult time?
Yes, she said that she was in contact with him.
Was it only one conversation you had with Letty about Rob and his use of sick leave?
Yes.
What did she tell you about her? This is your second Q&A final examination at 160 words per minute. Your proper names are James Smith, Sarasota, Florida, Main Street 301, Ford, BMW, Maine, Washington Boulevard, and Mary King. Ready? Please state your name for the record, sir.
James Smith.
And where do you live?
I live in Sarasota, Florida.
And what is your street address?
100 Main Street.
Do you remember the accident we are here today about?
Yes, sir, I do.
Were you the operator of a vehicle involved in this accident?
No, sir. I saw the accident happen.
Were you present at the scene of the accident?
Yes, sir, I was.
Where was the scene of the accident?
I was standing on the corner of Main Street and 301.
How long were you at the scene of the accident before the accident happened?
I would estimate 10 minutes.
Did you see the vehicles involved in the accident prior to impact?
Yes, I did.
What motor vehicles did you see?
I saw a white Ford and a tan BMW.
And how did you happen to notice these vehicles?
I was waiting for my wife to pick me up from work, so I was watching for her car.
Tell us what you saw.
I saw the white Ford traveling toward the traffic light.
What street was the Ford on?
Main Street.
And what direction was the Ford headed?
It was traveling west.
Approximately how fast was the Ford traveling when you first saw it?
I would estimate 30-35 miles per hour.
And where was the tan BMW?
It was stopped on the corner of Main and 301.
What street was the BMW on?
It was on 301, which is Washington Boulevard.
And what direction was it headed?
It was headed north.
Is there a traffic signal at that intersection?
Yes, there is.
And approximately what was the speed of the BMW?
It was stopped at a red light.
So the Ford had a green light on Main Street.
No, it was yellow when I looked at it when I first saw the Ford.
Tell us what happened.
The light on Main Street turned from red to green, and the tan BMW moved into the intersection and was hit by the Ford.
Were the police called to the scene of the accident?
Yes, I immediately called 911 from my cell phone.
Did you call an ambulance to the scene of the accident also?
Yes, I did. I told the operator to send an ambulance.
How long did it take for the police to arrive at the scene of the accident?
Approximately 5 minutes.
And how long did it take the ambulance to arrive at the scene of the accident?
About the same, 5 minutes.
What did you do at the scene of the accident after you made the call?
I ran to the BMW because the driver wasn't moving.
What part of the Ford struck the BMW?
The front end of the Ford struck the passenger side door of the BMW.
Approximately how fast was the BMW traveling at the time of impact?
It could not have been more than 5 miles per hour.
Approximately how fast was the Ford traveling at the time of impact?
30-35 miles per hour.
And you said he had a yellow light, is that right?
No, it was yellow when I first saw him coming, but by the time he got to the intersection, the light was red.
How far away from the point of impact was the Ford when you first saw it?
About 300 yards. It was up the block from the courthouse.
How long did you remain at the scene of the accident?
About an hour.
Were there any other witnesses at the scene of the accident?
Several people were standing around, but I don't know what they saw.
Do you know any of their names?
Mary King from my office was waiting on the corner, but she was talking to her friend and said she only heard the crash.
What time did the accident occur?
It was about 5 o'clock.
What was the weather on the day of the accident?
It was a sunny day and very hot.
Did you talk with the officers at the scene of the accident?
Yes, I did.
What did you tell them?
Just what I have told you today.
Were there passengers in either of the cars?
No, sir.
Did you talk to the driver of the Ford at the scene of the accident?
No, I did not. He ran from the scene of the accident.
Can you identify the person you said ran from the scene of the accident in the courtroom today?
Yes. He is seated at the table on the left.
And you are positive that this is your first Q&A final examination at 140 words per minute. Your only proper name is Jim. Ready? Did you see any of the young men at that time?
Yes, sir.
Were they there at the same time Jim got in front of the garage door?
Yes.
Were the young men in or out of the car?
Outside of their car.
Could you describe what the two men were wearing?
One of them was dressed all in white, but I don't remember what the other one was wearing.
Did you see the two of them exit the vehicle?
No.
Do you recall which way the vehicle was parked?
It was facing toward the apartment.
Do you recall how close the front of the vehicle was to the small fence that closes off the little yard in the apartment complex?
It was within a couple of feet.
Do you remember how close the vehicle was parked in relation to the garage door?
It was parked about even with the walkway.
Could you overhear anything that was said?
No, sir.
Was the next thing you noticed that Jim came up to the apartment?
No, sir.
There wasn't anything unusual about what you saw there?
No, sir. Not at that time.
Did you see Jim get struck or hit with anything when he was first down there?
No, sir.
Were either of the young men closer to Jim than the other?
No, sir.
Were there any young ladies in the area?
Yes, sir.
How many young ladies did you see there at the time?
Only two, I believe.
And no other young men besides the two we've already mentioned?
Not at that point.
Now, if I understand you right, the next thing that happened is Jim came back up into the apartment?
No, sir. There were two guys that came down from the apartment, and then Jim came back.
Do you know who these young men were?
One of them was a tenant at the complex.
And what did those two men do when they came down from the apartment?
They were out in the area with the other four people.
And they had just walked down to the downstairs apartment?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I understand you right, you've got 4 young men down in the parking area and 2 young ladies. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, Jim left the area?
Yes, sir.
The next time you saw Jim was when he came back in the front door of the apartment?
Yes, sir.
Were you still in the same location on the couch?
Yes. I was facing outside looking through the window.
Do you remember where Jim's wife was at that time?
She was sitting in a chair in the living room.
Had either of you been drinking that day?
No, sir.
Did you drink frequently with Jim and his wife?
No.
Did you drink with Jim once in a while?
Yes, sir.
Had you been taking any medication that day?
No, sir.
You were not under the influence of any medication or alcohol or drug?
No, I was not.
During that day, I think this was Tuesday or so, had you gone to work?
No. I was job hunting at that time.
Were you unusually tired that day for any reason?
No, sir.
Had you eaten at Jim's residence that day?
Yes, sir.
Were you living there with Jim and his wife at that time?
I was visiting.
Had you stayed overnight the night before?
Yes.
How long had you been staying overnight there?
I had been there for 2 weeks.
During the day of the assault, did you see Jim drinking?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what you saw him drinking that day?
He was drinking vodka.
Did you see him drinking out of the bottle that day?
No, sir. He was drinking out of a glass.
When Jim was down in the driveway and the 4 young men were there, do you have an opinion as to his state of sobriety at that time?
For Jim, he was pretty sober.
By that, do you mean you have seen him on occasions when he was very drunk?
Jim was a regular drinker.
Do you mean that he drank every day?
No, that's not what.
Completely spaced out where I'm at. This one? Okay. This is your second Q&A final exam at 140 words per minute. Your proper names are William Bryan, Bradenton Police Department, Sergeant Bryan, Palmetto Street, East Bradenton, Manatee County, Florida, Mr. Martin, and Walmart. Ready? Please state your name for the record.
William Bryan.
Speak up nice and loud for us if you would. How are you employed?
Bradenton Police Department, patrol officer.
How long have you been so employed?
6 years.
What's your current rank?
Sergeant.
Are you married?
Yes, sir.
Were you recently promoted to sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Bryan, I'd like to direct your attention to the date of this event, which is March 22nd of this year. The time was approximately 8:30 at night. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you on duty on that date and time?
Yes, I was.
Did you have occasion to be dispatched to 1500 Palmetto Street in East Bradenton?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did all the events that you're about to testify to take place in Manatee County, Florida?
Yes, sir.
Please tell the court the nature of the dispatch at that location.
It was a domestic disturbance call.
What happened as you were en route to the incident location?
Dispatch was telling me basic information. They told me they could hear a disturbance in the background.
Did they still have the 911 caller on the phone?
Yes, sir.
How far away were you from the scene?
I was probably 6 or 7 blocks away.
Were you riding alone?
Yes, sir.
Were you in a marked patrol car?
Yes, I was.
How were you dressed on this date and time?
I was in my marked uniform with my badge and stripes.
Was it similar to what you are wearing today?
Yes, sir.
What happened when you arrived at the residence?
I could hear a disturbance. I could hear people yelling, and I went straight to the noise, and that's where I came across Mr. Martin.
Where did you first see Mr. Martin?
He was in a little utility room, and he was banging on the door that goes into the residence.
Is Mr. Martin in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Where is he sitting, and what is he wearing?
At the defense table, he is wearing an orange prison suit.
When you first saw Mr. Martin, was there anyone else in his immediate vicinity?
There was another female there, but at the time I didn't know it was his mother.
Did you later find her out to be his mother?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what happened.
I asked him to step away from the door and see if we could talk about this calmly. At that point, he just started verbally abusing me, and he said I would have to come up and get him away from the door.
When he was banging on the door, was he saying anything?
I don't remember exactly the words, but he was yelling at a person that was on the other side of the door.
Were you able to see the person on the other side of the door?
I wasn't even looking for the other person.
How far away from Mr. Martin was his mom?
I would say maybe 15 feet.
And he became verbally abusive to you?
Yes, sir.
In what way?
He was cussing and physically threatening.
What happened next?
I kept trying to calm him down and get him away from the door.
What did you say?
I told him to get away from the door.
What happened next?
I ordered him away from the door and I tried pepper spraying him, but it didn't work.
Did you in fact use the pepper spray?
Yes, but it didn't work.
Did the pepper spray hit him?
I don't know. It didn't seem to bother him at all.
So tell us what happened.
He continued being verbally abusive. He picked up a big box-type fan and threw it at me. It missed me by inches.
Sergeant, did you see where he picked the fan up from?
It was leaning up against the utility room.
How far were you away from him when he threw the fan?
No more than 10 feet.
Can you describe the fan for the court?
It was a big square box fan, maybe 2 or 3 feet. A standard fan you would go down to Walmart.
I turn this off, right?
Mhm.
That was 4.